Okay, a very good morning, folks. Just 2 minutes or 1 minute actually away from the court, but let's get it going. Yesterday, Tuesday, Tuesday, the minister gave evidence, continued with evidence directed by a barrister, of course, and then yesterday as well. All right, so now let me tell you, I'll probably just spend a few minutes before dashing in because the case continues, the evidence continues, fourth day of our evidence continues in court start from 10:15, bearing any delays from any of the parties. But just to pick a few of the things that happened on Tuesday, and hopefully I'll be able to touch on one of the key things that also happened yesterday. Do not forget also that this case, we are now in week number 12. This case started January 19, and then after 2 weeks, more than 2 weeks of adjournment, case court came back in session on Monday. And on Tuesday, I gave you part of what happened on Monday 2 days ago. Yet on Tuesday, on that Tuesday, among the things the lawyers at defense, Diezani's barrister, continue with introducing her to the jurors. Remember also, the jurors have been warned, don't search the internet, don't research the story until after the trial. Of course, they can do that when they've been discharged from their duties. So this is the way the judge or a barrister, the Zionist barrister, have decided to tell a story by introducing her. And we got to see that this former minister is a woman of elegance, a woman of opulence, of course, from a very wealthy background. And then let me say this, we may not hear this from anywhere. This is a woman formerly married to a rear admiral of the Nigerian Navy. And if you know very well, most rear admirals, they do not go down in social class to marry just anybody. So we need to know that, and we need to have that. So all those arrow shopping of maybe 6 figures or whatever you heard that she was doing, they were not new, just to clarify that. And also, the lawyer said they asked for a family pictures. And among the many pictures which they showed the court on Tuesday, they showed us our parents' house. In fact, if you were to judge houses, if you were to judge a book by the cover, the house of our parents, looked far, far more bigger and better than even the Dorchester Hotel, And when asked whose house is this, she said, that's my parents' house. They've owned it for about 50 years. They also showed us, our former husband's house. They said, whose house is this? They said, this is my husband's country home. And also they showed us another picture of a house. So and they also showed us the interior of the properties, very, very, very luxurious, I must say. And like I mentioned earlier, even the hotels in London, having seen many of the interiors that they disclosed when the prosecution was making their case, the interior of our own house even looked far more better than the ones of the properties there in London. I just said I should mention that because this was tendered as part of the evidence by her barrister while they were leading her in evidence on Tuesday. Remember, Diezani is still the one in the witness box. Probably she will continue her evidence, but also on Tuesday, they showed us also, because the lawyer said they asked for a family picture so as to be able to tell our whole story, to be able to make their defense tight, of course. So they showed us a picture. When they showed us a particular picture, they said, who is this? She said, that's my mother. And that she's 92 going to 93. This was a picture taken on Easter Sunday that she was praising God having come from church. And she did mention that, look, my mother is not an invalid. because one of the prosecution witnesses had said that they installed a lift in one of the properties which they had been accused of. She said, my mother is not an invalid. Also, should mention that the mother looked happy and didn't look any inch like somebody who is 92, so that also should be put out. And also on that Tuesday was actually like a master class in the oil industry, because the defense were asking her, explain to us the meaning of cash call, explain to us joint venture, because you remember the jurors, even the lawyers themselves, even if they are lawyers or the judge, they probably don't have specialty in maritime or the oil industry. So she explained the meaning of cash call, that this was a strategic alliance between the government of an oil producing country and joint venture partners, international oil companies. So she explained that. She explained upstream. She explained what cash call is, what joint venture is. She explained policy. She explained the organogram of the NNPC, because the lawyers, they needed all this context to put all these things together. So they were asking, and she was giving us a lecture. In fact, you could have earned a certificate, 1-day certificate in the oil industry on Tuesday. So she was explaining that look, she sits on top, that the NNPC is just a parastatal under the Petroleum Ministry, and that things she does not ordinarily interfere in anything apart from what has come from the bottom up, that has been recommended by the group managing director of the NNPC before she signs the dotted line. So again, this must be put in context of this case. So those things were brought out on Tuesday, and yesterday also, the lawyers were attacking, they were making their defense of the count. Yesterday, also, the lawyers also, when they were leading her in the evidence, they pointed out one of the counts is that, one of the people who are not in this case, but Benedict Peters, whose name was mentioned several times, that she paid, that she took, or, she got advantage, that they paid her son's school fees. In the evidence yesterday, it was shown that the school payment, the fees for her son's payment that Benedict Peters paid was actually refunded. She called her son's school here in Canterbury and said that fee payment was in error, that wasn't the person that was supposed to make the payment. We saw email that the secretary for the registrar of her son's school wrote to her to say, look, the money has been returned to Benedict Peters. And hopefully later today, I'll be able to tell you more to unpack this story, but court starts in about 13 minutes, 10:15. I need to be right inside there. So this case is very exciting. And also, one thing I must add that Diezani also brought out yesterday, when they were asking her about the recording, that recording of May 2014, which many of us have known, where she told Kola Loko that, look, we are going to jail together. And she explained that, look, that was a time when she was confused, perplexed, and that, because prior to then, she had been told that Kola Loko had been going around boasting that she's going to kill her, she's going to bring her down. So she was in a confused state. So probably, and then she had that meeting because then Kola Loko and Gideon Mokore, their companies were owing NNPC millions of dollars, and they had been allowed to be lifting oil. She was not happy, so she called that meeting. And one of those two meetings, that she made that recording, the judges, they were being asked, why did you make that recording? Again, I'm going to unpack the details to you when I come back later today or tomorrow. That's it for now. I'll see you later. Okay.